As you look at this team, as it, getting closer to going to spring training, what do you think the top question or the most pressing question, or as we say in cliche land, the most burning question is about the Cardinals going into spring training?
Boy, I think it's probably a blend of health slash performance of the starters. I think that, I mean, if starters dictate how far a team goes, and that usually is what it means. The team goes as far as its pitching will take it, which usually means how far the rotation will take it. Then that's really where the Cardinals have to have their answers, right? They finished last season with two of their planned five members of the rotation in the bullpen because of injuries. Adam Wainwright did not make a start in the postseason. In fact, the only member of the planned rotation who the Cardinals had start in the playoffs is Miklasz, right?
Right.
And there's no guarantee, a coin flip whether or not Wainwright or Montgomery would have gotten that game three if the Cardinals got that far, right? So for them to go into the postseason, for them to go into spring training and say, look, this is our rotation and we feel confident about it, I think that's the big question. Is there are reasons for them to feel good about it, but there's also questions that group has to answer. Clarity, health, Matt's health slash effectiveness. Wainwright, with the corrections that he saw and made and felt he was on the cusp of really putting, back out there on the mound, are going to hold, and that September was, a blip and not a cause for concern. So I don't think there's a more significant or bigger question for the Cardinals. To be honest, it's probably one of the bigger questions in the National League. It's glossed over a little bit because so many of those players have track records, and there's reason for them to be healthy, and there's evidence of normal off seasons and all those things. But I mean, 1 through 6, Bernie, of their rotation, Hudson didn't have the season that he wanted. So what does he look like? Matt's injury, Flaherty injury, Wainwright searching and feels he has an answer, but still didn't have the September he wanted. Montgomery passed over for a playoff start. Of that group, Miklasz is the sure thing. And there are 5 guys who come to spring with something to show.
Yeah, I think, my goodness, I think at a time where you can't get people to agree on anything, it seems like, I think most absolutely would agree with what you just said there. Derek, and one thing there's a couple of things I want to throw at you, too, that aren't not so much about roster specifics, but you look at the Cardinals, and you and I, and, a lot of people, of course, in the media have emphasized the mediocrity of the NL Central, but also just, that the Cardinals were 45 and 41 outside of their own division last year, which I think is a pretty revealing thing. It would be 45 and 43 if you count the postseason. And
Go ahead and do it.
Right? Yeah, I think it's fair. So if you look at it, and again, I'm telling you what you already know, but let's just reset it for our listeners. The Cardinals have been used to playing, 76 games a year in the division, something like that. And now with the new schedule format, it'll only be 52. And, I look at that and I think maybe I'm overreacting to what they did outside the division, last year. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, kind of in a smart aleck way, you're only going to have 52 games in your own division this year. Did anyone kind of tell the Cardinals front office about this thing where they're only going to play 52 in their division? I mean, are they? Yeah. Do they need to use a line from Jaws? Do they need a bigger boat, and they don't seem to realize it, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I've kind of fiddled around. Yes, to your point, yes, they have, because Mozeliak has said he's an advocate for the new schedule, and so is DeWitt, so they're aware of it. Just on I understand you're being facetious, but both of them have chimed in on how fond they are of it. So I think that's interesting. But to your larger point, I've tried to fiddle around with how much it's going to, and I'm gonna find a way to do it, and come up with a story about it. But I want to find the right way to do it, and I have fiddled around with this, like who's going to see the biggest change? Because I have a pet theory, and so far, if you kind of go through the numbers, it works out that the Cardinals aren't going to change all that much their schedule, because they're still going to face the Royals and the Tigers and the A's, and they're still going to get their chances to devour teams that are either tanking or are less than them, and that is going to be enough to fill in the gaps left by not facing the Pirates and the Reds as much. Okay, so I think what I think is, and so far it's kind of bearing out that way, is the teams that are going to see the most significant change are the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. And it might be enough to make the Diamondbacks a contender, and the Rockies, if they woke up, could be. Because they're going to have less games against the Giants and Dodgers and Padres. And while they'll also face the Yankees more often and the Red Sox more often and teams like that more often, they're also going to face teams more in their market size more often, such as the Twins and the White Sox, who act out, and down the list. And they're going to get the Detroits of the world often, and what would be another, and the Royals more often. So I think it's actually going to help the teams that I think the new schedule is going to help the teams that are lodged in divisions with big spending, bigger market, bigger television deals, behemoths, more than it's going to detract from the Cardinals. If that makes sense. But your overall point is well stated, and maybe the best way to do it is you're going to have less games against the Cubs, which now might make the Cubs better, because you're not going to have to. You're only going to get to play them so many times. They play even. You're not going to get the wins after, say, you're not going to get as many games in the division after the trade deadline when everyone else is going in the wrong direction, right? That's going to change. And so it's things like that are going to have more of a subtle impact, but I'm not sure, and maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I'm not sure it's going to significantly change the Cardinals as much as it may help make Arizona stand out a little bit more this year. And Colorado, if they want to take advantage, could. But the Diamondbacks, I think, are very compelling because of the new schedule. Not that I think the Cardinals are going to have less advantage because of their division.
Derrick Goold with us, and here's another one. And
did that make
sense? It does. It's. I just no. The best point you made in terms of penetrated my thick skull is that they're going to have as many games against the Reds and the Pirates, but they're still going to get their crack at some teams that are pretty much in the same category as the Reds and the Pirates.
Yeah.
But I also look at the Cardinals, primarily the same nucleus, and if you look at the last two seasons, they're 66 and 74 in games against teams that ended up with a winning record, and then they're like hold on one second, man. They're 117 and 67 against teams that ended up with a losing record. I mean, that is a huge disparity, and I'm not saying that they're the only team that applies to, but it does make you wonder. And you and I have talked about this. The Cardinals seem to be in this pattern, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you have a different way of looking at it. They have this tendency to kind of overrate how good they are, or overestimate themselves.
Okay, so I have two thoughts on that. One, records against winning teams. It is necessary for that team to be a winning team, so it kind of implies that you probably will have a closer to 500 record, just by the definition, right? Because it's a winning team. So they had to get those wins somewhere, and they're going to come from everywhere. I do think that the Cardinals have an inflated sense because for a while two things. One is they still kind of talk about winning the division as this red carpet into the playoffs. It's not anymore. not even a shag carpet into the playoffs. It's a carpet into the wild card because you don't to win the NL Central, you don't need enough wins to be second or first in the NL. Now, to win a more robust division, you do, and that comes with benefits, right? First round bye now, for example. The fact that you don't have to play a three-game series. And I'm sorry, like a 3-game series, you and I have both seen really good Cardinal teams go into a 3-game series or host the Pirates for a 3-game series and lose because the Pirates have the better pitching advantage, even though they might be 18 games back. It happens. That happens all season long. And now you have a chance in the playoffs to avoid that, right?
Right.
If you finish 1-2. So I do think, like, to your second point there, I do think there is an element of if you gear your if you kind of set your compass in orienteering, right? If you kind of set your compass towards the north of winning the NL Central, you're going to be off track a little bit when it comes to October because you're going to be, 4 degrees behind everybody else because that's how many wins less it takes to win a division like this versus a more robust league where you say you aim it a little higher. You orient your compass to a few degrees more of north because the prevailing headwind is going to throw you off a little bit, right? So you probably dial it up a little bit in another division, and that gives you a truer sense of what you're facing in October.
All right, Derrick, I wanted to ask you this one. And there's I don't believe that there is a sure way to answer this, so I'm calling, I'm basically calling on you to speculate or theorize. Obviously, there's a big problem with the financial collapse, if that's the term, of the regional sports networks like Bally. And, it's something that Manfred has talked about. It's something that the DeWitts have talked about. You've written about it. But pardon my obvious attempt to connect the dots, but is the apprehension or the fears or the anxieties over what seems to be a revenue hit that's coming because of this, at least for a while, would that explain why perhaps the Cardinals held the line and didn't spend more than they have so far this offseason? Are those two things related in your opinion?
So, two things. One, the Cardinals say no when directly asked that question. The DeWitt said no.
Right.
They did offer that it could inform budgets here forward as they look in a 3-year, 5-year window because that the planned rise in whatever rights fee and everything like that. Now, that could change, and therefore how they look at the payroll growth could. They say for this year, no, it did not. There is evidence of that in the sense that they had deals that they didn't get done. So if they sign a left-handed bat for $11 million, then they're right around that 185, right? That they thought that the curve would have taken them towards. But that player signed elsewhere, or those two players signed elsewhere. And they were in the market for that kind of hitter in that like 8 to kind of 12 million range, either 1 or 2 years or one with a building option. And that kind of was where they're looking. I wish I knew. I know more in general scopes as to, the kind of player that they were chasing, like the kind of dollar, left-handed bat, and what they offered. And it kind of like it's not a confirmed example, but it's a good example of like what Gallo got from the Twins, where there was more playing time available to him than maybe just being part of a DH or part of an outfield spot or part of a competition. And that was something that the Cardinals ran into with that, is they did not. They met the finances that the left-handed bat wanted, but not the opportunity. Similar thing with some of the pitchers that they talked to. They did explore some of like deals with some of the like swingman and depth guys. They recently signed a guy, Suarez, from the KBO, but they got him on a minor league deal. Some of the deals that they were looking at were major league deals, and they would have come in at that, like, say, $5 to $8 million range. And so now you're over 180 for an opening day roster for the first time in club history. So you could see how there was spending that they wanted to do and there's even some frustration that they didn't come through with some of their with some of what they wanted. So anyway, when you look at that, when you look at that realm, you can see how it didn't put a crimp on this year's budget, but they acknowledge that like moving forward, it's going to have an influence unless there's a solution from Major League Baseball or from these RSNs or from somewhere.
Derrick,
did that answer your question?
No, it's not a. I appreciate
so reporting bears that out is what I'm saying.
Right.
Their statements, and then like reporting. Well, I can't. Well, like I said, I know some of the names. I know some of the names they've been linked to. I mean, I've written some of them. They can't quite pin down which of the lefties was their left-handed bats was their preference. But regardless, that whole class signed for that amount of money, and that would have changed this look of this payroll.
I was going to ask you this more of like a. I know our listeners would want me to ask you. I didn't check the wire today, or otherwise known as MLB trade rumors, which always keeps up to date the transactions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I didn't check that today, but there have been, and you wrote about this actually several weeks ago. There's some left-handed relievers that were on the market who did really, really well and have done well and are very attractive. And I know that that 2-year deal the Mets gave to some somewhat average left-handed reliever kind of upset the
Phillies.
Yeah, the Phillies. I'm sorry. Why did I say Mets? Yeah, Phillies. Kind of upset the perceived salary scale for what a lefty reliever should make, and that probably ticked some teams off. But you get a sense that they're looking at either Matt Moore or Andrew Chafin, at least specifically those two, maybe others.
Yeah, they've had some contact / interest. Does it range beyond due diligence? There was interest in Chafin. Obviously, that market took off a little bit. And also along the same line, the Cardinals have what they want to see from Cabrera. Some of this might be buying time before buying the lefty, if that makes sense.
Right.
Moore is a bit of a more. I almost said it there wrong. Moore is a bit more of a surprise, I guess. There was real advertising from the Rangers early on that there was a hyper aggressive market for him, and that there was going to be a move on him pretty quick. And the Rangers, I think, the Rangers GM at one point in time in one of the the Dallas Morning News, I believe, said look, we may not be in that because it's a pretty aggressive market for him, and yet here they are, and he's still not signed. I don't know that you kind of get a pause there, right? Like why? Because everything he did last year was really good, especially moving from the starter to reliever. So is that because he wants to start again? And I don't know this. Is that the offer that he's waiting for? The team that will give him that chance with the backup of a relief? Well, then he wants a starter salary, but they can only count on the kind of relief he gave. I could see where there would be a pause in the market for him based on what he's seeking and what he's being offered. And a staring contest would ensue that would put it right up to brinkmanship of spring training. With Chase, like I said, I think someone from the Cardinals' point of view is buying time to see what they have because it's been a move. And they can. If pushed, do they make the offer? That, like you said, needs the market to kind of move past where everybody expected it to be. That comes when you get the call that says, "Well, we're moving on," or they get the call and say, "Yeah, this isn't working out with the lefties you have," and that's coming at hearing that point, but it's not there yet. It is also, let's quick aside. It was also it's a strategy that Miklasz has used in the past. We can rattle off the names of the players, probably Kyle Loesch most famously, where Mo said going into spring, you can always find pitching if you have dollars. And you can always find it. So you can go into spring and you can keep shopping. And it is something that he has used before because a pitcher is going to want to find a job. and you fade from the part of the winter where pitchers are picky about roles a team has for them to being really eager to get a roster spot and sort out the role later.
Derrick, when do you actually begin to travel to Jupiter? You driving? You flying? What's the timetable though?
No, back in the air. Airlines permitting. Next week, Tuesday. So headed down Tuesday to begin. Depends somewhat on how quickly we get there Tuesday, but Tuesday off to Florida, and then if coverage doesn't start right away Tuesday, it'll be there Wednesday, and then onward.
Well, we'll be checking in with you, and we appreciate it very much. So safe travels to you, but maybe we'll have a chance to visit with you next week, but depending on your schedule.
Yeah,
but
I think we're planning to talk to Jupiter.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you very much, and take care, my friend. Take care.
All right, talk to you soon. Thanks, Bernie.
That's our good friend Derrick Goold, and always appreciate his thoughtful answers. We're live at Friendly Sports Bar and Grill here in South County at Bayless and 55. Don't forget, we have some gift certificates available for you today, $25 from Tangle's Hair Studio, a complete men's and women's hair salon down here in South County at 9964 Lynn Ferry Drive. I think we've got a $25 gift certificate, which I neglected to tell you, shame on me earlier, from Kendrick's Meat and Catering, old-fashioned butcher shop that's got all kinds of the freshest quality, high-quality meat, and that's at 4324 Weber, which is right up the street here from Friendly's. Free trivia tonight after the show at 6:30, and we'll tell you about some other things going on. But we should probably get a break in, and I've got some other Cardinals stuff actually I want to get to. We also want to talk a little bit about SLU's bad loss last night at Fordham. I warned yesterday I thought it was a trap game for the Billikens because Fordham has been winning games. Not that they're a great team, but they were kind of starting to feel their oats a little bit. And, they just kind of ambushed the Billikens in the second half. It was kind of a surprising loss, the way it unfolded. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Mizzou in action tonight. And you don't want to take anything for granted, but they're at home against LSU, and LSU's 1-7 in the conference and it's got some real issues as far as stopping people. And unless Mizzou just doesn't play, doesn't really compete or just is sort of lost in space somewhere, that should be a nice home win for the Tigers, who are attempting to get to 5-4 in the league. And they continue to be a lot of fun, just a lot of fun. So when we return on the Bernie Show, we'll get into some Cardinal stuff. I had some thoughts on a couple of things. It's always a lot of things. I come up with stuff to find it.
Oh, yeah, you do.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. I just I love the Contreras signing, but, it's just astonishing to me that they didn't do more. And I'm not even saying they should have spent $300 million on a shortstop. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying, what is it about them that they just seem to ignore? They're like in denial about how they have spent the last two seasons beating up on really bad teams and failing against good teams, but yet they think their roster is, hey, we're not the 27 Yankees, but I'd take my chances against them. It's like their attitude. And why are they in such denial about this? I'm telling you, man, as time goes on, it's bugging me more and more and more and more. Why do you beat up the NL Central, which is good? You can only play the schedule you have. But why do you take those results and sort of pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, we're the man. Yeah, we're the man. We're going to kick some ass. You don't mess with the Cardinals, but then they can't beat winning teams.
You're the big man in the small room, and when the room gets bigger, it's like, oh, here we go.
It's just really become annoying to me. As much as I respect so much of what they do, it's just and I'm all in favor of success and appreciate it. But you wonder why they have done poorly in the postseason. That explains a lot of it. They extrapolate these big-time results against really bad teams. And that's how they define themselves, you know? They don't look at how bad they've been against winning teams and look at that and say, well, you know, hey, you think maybe that tells us we need to get better, we need to improve? No, they don't look at it that way.
One thing
do they expect the Pirates and the Reds to be in the postseason against them? No, you're not allowed to do that.
No.
You can't name your opponent. No. Anyway, go ahead, man. Sorry.
One thing that Derrick kind of hinted around at that has bugged me a little bit, and this is not a payroll thing. This is a thing where I think the organization's got to do a little bit better job of getting players to want to come here.
Yeah.
And that is he referenced the Joey Gallo thing.
Yeah.
They kept telling everybody, well, we were trying to get a guy here, but we couldn't promise him he was going to play every day.
Yeah.
You got to do a better job on that, selling your team. Hey.
Well, I don't think they could have promised him like regular play.
No, but do a better job going, yeah, but you come here, we're going to win.
Yeah.
The other one was this kid, and I don't even know anything about him, but it's the point of the pitcher Roshinsky that they wanted out of the KBO.
He's nothing.
But they kept saying they want him, and their excuse is, well, we couldn't promise him he was going to start. Well, can't you promise him you're going to play for a winning team as opposed to going to Oakland and signing there? And I don't even know if he's worth a darn either. But
no, as a matter of principle, you're absolutely correct.
You know what I mean by that?
However, I kept hearing, like you said, I'm hearing about this Roshinsky. I'm hearing about this Roshinsky. I never really heard of him that much, or didn't cross my radar all that much.
Right.
So I'm hearing about this guy, and I'm thinking, so they're back. They're back over in Japan or wherever, and they found another pearl.
Yeah.
And I looked them up. It's Verhagen too. He's never done anything in the major leagues, and he pitched as Verhagen did. He pitched not great, but he was solid in Japan for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Solid, no better than solid. And Roshinsky. They want this guy Roshinsky, and I know Derrick has mentioned him in some of the pieces he's written. Oh, well, they wanted this Roshinsky, and I'm thinking, well, it's too bad they lost out. No, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, well, thank goodness he signed with somebody else. I mean,
I know. When I hear the name, I go, well, it doesn't excite me. But the excuse that's given is, well, he chose Oakland because we couldn't let him. I'm like,
good for him.
Well, I don't know. That bugs me when you start losing guys because you can't do a better job of selling your organization.
And the other thing too is, again, I didn't ask him to sign Dansby Swanson to a $177 million deal, or pay what Seager got, what Trey Turner got. This is, of course, Seager being last year, Trey Turner this year, Bogarts, all these guys. Didn't even say, oh man, they have to do that. Never said it, because they got Mason Wynn, and I think he'll be up in 2024. Not that he's a lock, but I'm just saying, I understand at least they have a hotshot prospect that they're excited about, and that's okay that they want to at least give him a chance. I mean, I don't have I'm not opposed to that kind of thing at all, but so we didn't. Most people didn't think it was all that big of a deal. Of course, they didn't want to spend all that money on Bogarts or like the other guys I mentioned.
Yeah.
But you all are too cheap to go get a left-handed reliever?
They need one.
Which is a clear need, and we're talking about a couple of guys with proven track records, and so you can't fill one basic need at a lower level, a spot in your bullpen? Again, it's really nice that you beat up the Pirates. That's good for you,
Yeah.
It's really great that you take advantage of a Reds team that it's all but like folded. The ownership, I'm not surprised the ownership would just one day announce they're like folding the business.
Yeah, we're done.
I mean, what a joke. Anyway.